making, the moral cowardice from a president who is clearly not fit to lead this country.
If there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
It's easy to second guess.
We do take care of our own, and we leave nobody behind.
The Biden administration has managed that as well as it could be managed under the circumstances we were placed in.
It's what America's all about. It's about pulling together, leaving nobody behind. Couldn't this have been done in a more orderly manner? I respectfully disagree.
Americans held hostage, abandoned behind enemy lines. Day 20.
All right, day 20, Americans held hostage, held behind enemy lines of the Taliban terrorists. And tonight we begin in May, 1 month before the Taliban's fighting season. Now, this was President Trump's deadline for withdrawal. Now, if, and it's a big if, the Taliban, if they followed through with all of their promises, because they knew if they broke any rules, harmed any Americans, killed any of our allies, they knew under Donald Trump the consequences, they would be dire. And according to President Trump, no matter what, the United States would maintain control of Bagram Air Force Base in perpetuity. We built it, we paid for it, we own it, we're keeping it. But then came Joe Biden, the self-proclaimed foreign policy expert, and his clueless advisors arbitrarily pushing the withdrawal date to August, okay, during the peak Taliban fighting season. Then Biden did nothing as the Taliban terrorists began what was a full-scale assault on our Afghan allies, and they began their march that led them to taking control of Kabul. And that started in April, and then May, and then June, and July, and then August. And instead of fighting back at any point and pushing back on the Taliban and holding them accountable, as Donald Trump said he would, and stop their advance, Biden ordered a full-scale retreat, abandoning base after base in the middle of the night, leaving weapons and aircraft and military gear, important biometrics data behind, all for the Taliban's taking. He's now armed them completely. In private, Joe Biden knew that his Afghanistan policies, well, they were rapidly collapsing. But instead of being honest with we, the American people, instead of warning Americans that were there while we had control of Kabul, warning our allies while we had control and telling them we're going to speed up this withdrawal, leave immediately, he goes on national TV and said, no, everything's great, one of the best trained armies in the world. He promised that the Afghan army was more than capable of defending the country. That's what he said in July, the same month that he's going to tell, oh, that's right, the president of Afghanistan to lie. Look.
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped, as well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
None of that was true, and we now know Joe Biden knew it wasn't true. Joe Biden lied to you, the American people, right there. And we have the proof to show you. And now, according to a leaked phone call conversation and transcript from July, courtesy of Reuters, we know that Joe Biden also encouraged the Afghan president to lie as well and change the perception, whether it's true or not. You need to just project a different picture that all is great. Joe needed a political win. So perception was more important than the reality that we all know Joe knew and the rest of the world knew. And so in July, while engaging and encouraging Ghani to change perceptions, Biden abandoned Bagram Air Base in the middle of the night. In doing so, he left every American and every one of our Afghan allies in Kabul totally, completely defenseless. And in 1 month, the Taliban easily marched to the outskirts of Afghanistan's capital city. Not prepared to take control of such a large city, well, Washington Post is now telling us the Taliban actually offered not to invade Kabul, to let Joe Biden keep it. Joe Biden, according to their report, said, no thanks. The city's all yours. We'll just retreat. Just let us have the airport. And guess what? The perimeter around the airport, that's yours too. But don't worry, Biden was telling us, the American people, he planned for every contingency. He promised the United States would not leave any American behind. He said that over and over and over again, but you might remember this.
The commitment holds to get everyone out that, in fact, we can get out and everyone should come out. And that's the objective. That's what we're doing now. That's the path we're on, and I think we'll get there.
So Americans should understand that troops might have to be there beyond August 31st.
No, Americans should understand that we're going to try to get it done before August 31st.
But if we don't, the troops will stay.
If we don't, we'll determine at the time who's left.
And
if there are American forces, if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
We're going to stay till we get them all out. Joe Biden once again lying to the American people. The scene around the airport, it was horrific. Thousands of people rushing to get in. Many trampled to death. Many were beaten and gassed at Taliban checkpoints. There were scenes of babies being passed to U.S. soldiers, mothers and fathers literally even throwing them over walls with barbed wire and razor wire. It took hours, sometimes days, for anyone to even get to the airport gates. And American citizens, those with American visas, they were all left to fend for themselves. While other countries like France, the UK, the Dutch, they were sending special forces behind enemy lines. They were extracting their citizens. U.S. forces were under strict instructions not to leave the airport walls. As a result, many Americans turned to private security agencies, spending tens of thousands of dollars to secure safe passage to the airport. Make no mistake, there was no safe passage. Matter of fact, State Department memos to people in Afghanistan said, we cannot guarantee your safety, but you might want to make your way to the airport. How comforting. On Thursday, August the 26th, a suicide bomber detonated a massive bomb at the gates of the airport. That killed 13 brave U.S. servicemen and women and more than 150 others. Yes, their blood is on Joe Biden's hands, because all of this could easily have been prevented. Just 4 days later, all U.S. forces were gone. Well, now we have no diplomatic presence on the ground in Afghanistan. We have no embassy there. We have limited intel capabilities, no security forces whatsoever. But there are still hundreds, maybe more than 1,000. They don't know the exact number of Americans trapped behind enemy lines, hostages to the whims of the Taliban and probably soon ISIS-K and al-Qaeda. Thousands more of our Afghan allies, he signed their death certificates, and they remain hopelessly trapped. There is no way out, and now they're at the mercy of the terrorists in the Taliban and worse. It is the single worst foreign policy failure in my lifetime, one of the worst in American history. But this week, Joe Biden, he had to congratulate himself. Mission accomplished, job well done, and goes on to say it is an extraordinary success, the right, the wise, the best decision. Really? Take a look.
The extraordinary success of this mission was due to the incredible skill, bravery, and selfless courage of the United States military and our diplomats and intelligence professionals. Now some say we should have started mass evacuation sooner. And couldn't this have been done in a more orderly manner? I respectfully disagree.
Joe Biden has failed this country, and we will never forget it. Here with reaction, former CIA station chief, Fox News contributor Dan Hoffman, Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz, and Fox Nation host Lara Logan. Lara, we'll start with you. Like Dan, like Jason Chaffetz, all of you, to your credit, have been hearing from people now caught behind enemy lines. We can't get an exact number, but the numbers that the administration are giving us, Laura, I am told by almost everybody, are much higher than they're saying. What are you hearing?
Oh, without a doubt, Sean. I mean, day by day, officials who were involved, Americans who were involved in the evacuations, I mean, they kept reaching out to me and saying, like when Biden said there were 7,000, they said, we didn't even have 7,000 people on the tarmac that day. We didn't have 7,000 people in the facilities. We didn't have places to process 7,000. We didn't have facilities to receive them when they landed. I mean, they said it's just not even a fraction of that is actually the real number. And there's a lot buried in there, too, because they weren't letting people in. The gates of that airport were closed, Sean. And when Biden said, we're not leaving anyone behind enemy lines, outside of the airport was all enemy lines. The Taliban controlled it all, except for the Panjshir, where the Afghan president and the Afghan Special Operations Forces and resistance are still fighting now. And what was just so extraordinary is that you could have American women. There was one woman who was 3 months pregnant with a small child. She was at the gates begging for help. It was the third day that she'd been at that gate. I really want people to understand that there were American citizens, approved visa holders, green card holders. You know, a mother with her 3 American children, she and her husband were green card holders, denied access. All of these people were left behind. And the Biden administration's State Department has blocked every effort at every turn. And what I've heard from multiple sources is that they've been going to all the neighboring countries and blocking the refugees, blocking the rescue efforts. They're furious that there's an armada of veterans and concerned Americans who are saying enough is enough, Sean. They're not going to be misrepresented by this administration that does not represent the heart of the American people. And this is a mark of shame that they refuse to carry.
Jason Chaffetz, Joe Biden said he would leave no American behind, and he also promised our allies that we would get them out, too. Not necessarily that they come here. We'd get them the hell out of there. Okay. Joe Biden, he didn't act. He didn't move sooner than he could have. He claims, though, that he has leverage here. Jen Psaki claims we have leverage. I argue we don't have any leverage. They have Americans. They're called hostages. Where I grew up, we call them hostages. When we talk about financial aid, where I grew up, we call that ransom. So that's the only option we seem to have. What if it's Mogadishu, Congressman? What if it becomes ISIS beheading people? We have seen those videos. All of us have watched them. I don't urge people at home to see the things all 4 of us have seen.
No, it's inevitable. I think it's probably playing itself out right now. And can you imagine the horror of being a woman with an American passport there in Afghanistan? You heard the President of the United States promise that, you know what, the Taliban is not going to overtake Afghanistan. They have 300,000 people. We have billions of dollars of equipment there and pallets of cash. And he, not only was he wrong, but he lied. And that's why I think July 23rd is going to be that pivotal moment when the Democrats have got to come to the table here and be honest about the principle. The President of the United States lied to the Afghan president. He lied to the American people. He created a facade that wasn't there, and people made life or death decisions about whether or not to depart and leave the country based on what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris told them to do. And it was a death sentence.
Dan Hoffman, you've been in the intelligence community for a long time. One thing that I know for sure from every source, this was not in any way an intelligence failure. My 2-part question. One, do you agree with what people are telling me, that the CIA pulled out like 7 weeks earlier, and that they told Biden in no uncertain terms, and one day I assume these papers will be released and Jason will be giving them to us. Number one, I want to ask you about what they knew when they knew it, and do we have any options here short of the ransom that Joe Biden is kind of telegraphing he's willing to go for?
You know, the CIA still has the same mission that they've always had, which is to detect threats and preempt them before they're visited on our shores. And the mission also includes taking care of our own. You know, nothing says mission not quite accomplished like the 100+ American citizens still sitting on the X inside Afghanistan, and the Afghan SIV holders, including the translator who helped save President Biden, then Senator Biden's life back in 2008 when his Black Hawk helicopter went down. That we don't have an embassy anymore, as you mentioned. We don't have the military capability anymore. I think that the intelligence community, CIA in particular, is going to figure out a way to get there, but it's not going to be the same. We won't have military bases, and we won't have the leverage to extract our people. And I don't think the Taliban needs our money. They've got China, they've got Russia and Pakistan, all benefactors, and they've had relationship with Iran, which has provided the Taliban with material assistance. So we're in a very bad place. We had leverage. We had Bagram Air Base. We had military troops. Don't. We had all of that. If we had,
we had leverage.
We had it. Okay. If we had, that was our leverage. If we had evacuated our civilians then, when we had the military in country, we'd be fine. But we reversed it instead, And that's the key takeaway, I think, from the President Biden's conversation with Ghani, which is President Biden realized back then that the Afghan National Army wasn't going to make it. And that was the time to hold and keep our military in country until we got our civilians out.
I want to thank all three of you, not just for being a guest, but for your efforts behind the scenes to help our fellow Americans now behind enemy lines. I know all three of you have done a lot that nobody probably will ever know about. Thank you. When we come back, my interview with two Gold Star fathers. They lost their sons at the Karzai International Airport. That attack, that terror attack, and their message to President Biden. Stay with us as this special edition of Hannity continues.
Welcome to Fox News Live. I'm Matt Finn. Federal health officials urging the White House to scale back plans to offer COVID-19 booster shots. Regulators may only have enough data to recommend the shots to recipients of the Pfizer vaccine. The Biden administration plans to offer a third dose to the fully vaccinated 8 months after their second dose of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. The rollout is slated to start on September 20th, pending FDA approval. Texas abortion providers want a temporary restraining order against anti-abortion groups. It blocks them from suing providers and healthcare workers at Planned Parenthood clinics in the state under a new law. Planned Parenthood sued Texas Right to Life and Associates in state court to stop them from enforcing the state's new 6-week abortion ban. I'm Matt Finn. Now back to Hannity. For all your headlines, log on to foxnews.com.
Now, earlier this week, I spoke to two Gold Star fathers about their sons paying the ultimate sacrifice at Karzai International Airport in Kabul, and they had a message for Joe Biden about his administration's botched exit from Afghanistan. And tonight, we're continuing to remember the American heroes lost in last week's terror attack at Karzai International Airport in Kabul. 13 brave men and women from all across the country, as young as 20 years old, made the ultimate sacrifice, serving their country with honor, bravery, distinction, dignity. Remember, we have an all-volunteer military. These brave souls, they took on this challenge. These were America's finest, our national treasure, that rose to the occasion, met the moment, represented the best, the very best our country has to offer. And quite frankly, they deserve so much better than this, and better than to have Joe Biden look down and check his watch during the dignified transfer of remains over the weekend. Joining me now, they're two Gold Star fathers. They lost their sons in last week's attack. Mark Schmitz, he's the father of Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, and Darren Hoover, the father of Staff Sergeant Darren Hoover Jr., who went by the name of Taylor. Let me start with you, Mark, if I may. Your son was sent back to Afghanistan to assist with the evacuation efforts. You said it's something you always wanted to do. I never have seen a young man train as hard as he did to be the best soldier he could be. He went back just for this mission. Explain.
Yes, he did. First, I just wanted to say that Jared has exemplified so much that any man could ever strive for, and made me so proud to watch him undertake this endeavor and going into the Marine Corps. And he completed his boot camp, went to Jordan, was excited about that, and was constantly looking to do more, and was given that opportunity. Yeah.
First, I want to say to both of you, if I may, as a parent, nobody can understand the loss that both of you have gone through. I can't imagine the pain that both of you are living through, and I'm very sorry about that. Mark, you met with Biden over the weekend. How did that go?
Well, initially I wasn't going to meet with him, but then I felt I owed it to my son to at least have some words with him about how I felt, and it didn't go well. he talked a bit more about his own son than he did my son, and that didn't sit well with me.
Your son was a hero. I can't imagine the pain. I really can't. Darren, you're said about your son, he had the biggest heart in the world, and no parent, and as a parent, I think every parent watching right now understands this. No parent should have to bury their sons or daughter. It's not supposed to work that way. He was scheduled to return home on September the 15th and retire and marry his fiancée, Nicole. I can't imagine how you're feeling today.
You know, it's the absolute worst feeling in the world. Having them be away for so long and doing the job that they all love, there's no doubt about it. Being a Marine to these guys is everything. And having this happen to these heroes, every one of them's a hero. There's no doubt. Every last one of them. They died with their brothers and their sisters right next to them, doing exactly what they all wanted to do, and that is defending this country.
America's national treasure. That's how I refer to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You chose not to meet with President Biden. I don't know if you want to comment on that. And I'd like to know, when I saw Biden look at his watch, I was literally like, you got to be kidding me. Because all of this to me was preventable. Because we saw them on the march. You know, we had April, May, June, July to extradite everybody and our equipment. We didn't do it. There's no excuse to me for this. Why did you choose not to meet with the president, Darren?
For exactly the reasons you just gave. We said absolutely not. We didn't want to deal with him. We didn't want him anywhere near us. We as a family decided that was the way it was going to be. In reference to the checking of his watch, that didn't happen just once. That happened on every single one that came out of that airplane. It happened on every single one of them. They would release the salute, and he'd look down at his watch on every last one, all 13. He looked down at his watch. And as a father, you know, seeing that and the disrespect and hearing from his former leaders, one of his master sergeants said exactly what you just said, that this was avoidable, that they left them over there, they had them over there and let them down. And that we can't have that. It can't happen ever again.
We also abandoned Americans. Americans now are on their own. We left them behind. Mark, you want to comment on the watch incident? Did you notice the same thing?
Yes, I did. I actually leaned into my son's mother's ear and I said, I swear to God, if he checks his watch one more time, and that was only probably 4 times in, I couldn't look at him anymore after that. Just considering especially the time and why we were there, it was I found to be the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen.
I know there are no words that any commentator or host could express that's going to take your pain away. But I can tell you, this audience shares in your anger and shares in a deep appreciation and thankfulness and sadness at an unnecessary loss of life, I believe, in this case. And we'll be praying for all of you, your families, these incredible young men that you raised that made this country the greatest country on earth. They make the country great. There are some leaders that don't make the country great. They did. Our thoughts and prayers are with you both. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Darren. And coming up, former President Donald Trump reacts to the horrific terrorist attack in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members as we continue.
Every